Hi, this is Paul, and I am with Valerie today, and she is a longtime corner person. For a while, when I was playing around with my uh, bridges of meaning question and answer, and I just talk the whole time. So I had someone read the questions to me, and Valerie offered to read the questions for me. And she also headed up the project of an anthology about the corner, which is what we're going to talk about. Not too long ago, I did a video with Nolan Watson about his book on Dante. And so this is going to be on the anthology, but well, part of what's happened with the Randos conversation is that other people, Chad and Seabax and others have sort of picked up the mantle for when I can't keep up with everyone. But I still want to, just for my own sake, because I also can't manage to watch everything. For my own sake, do my own treatment with people. So Valerie agreed to first we're going to do some Randos things, and then we're going to talk about the anthology. So
Sounds good.
thank you. Is it Val or Valerie? Which would you prefer?
Val is fine.
Val is
Yeah,
fine. Okay,
yeah.
nice
So
and
I
short.
go by both, but my close friends call me Val.
Okay,
It's just easier, and my family calls me Val. So
all right,
yeah.
sounds good. All right, Val. Well, I'll start with the standard question. Tell me about the home you grew up in.
Oh, interesting. So my father worked in media production. He was an actor, writer, director. My mother had an interesting eclectic background of her own. Her father was a cultural attaché, mostly in Latin America, South America regions, and she grew up going to different countries down there, and her parents would help with like exchange programs of like the Boston Symphony would go down to and exchange places with the Brazilian Symphony, and also they founded a lot of libraries down there. She has she had severe hearing loss and vision issues, but her she was technically deaf without a hearing aid, and so she grew up with the big hearing aids that like this that went on the waist, and so her mother uh, homeschooled her, taught her English first. They didn't realize that she was hard of hearing until she didn't get a hearing aid till like 8 years old, I think.
Wow.
Um, but she didn't want, at that time, people were taken to a sanatorium or a place where deaf people went. And her mother decided, no, I'm going to teach her myself. And she speaks very well. Um, and then, so she had a very eclectic background of not only her vision hearing handicaps, but also growing up in different countries during her youth and her teenage years. Um, and my parents met in, I think it was Rhode Island, if I remember right. Um, and things progressed naturally. They don't really talk about it. It's not a secret or anything. It's just, it wasn't like life-shattering or anything.
No.
But they ended up falling in love, getting married, and then I came along, and then a year and a half later, my brother came along, and it was just the two of us. Um, so that's kind of like a little bit of overview of like um,
Any religious background in your family?
yes, when my family moved from New York to Colorado, my parents found a church and became Christians.
Oh.
And I grew up in a Pentecostal church. Um, I uh, Unfortunately, we're one of the ones that kind of went away from church. Dad actually, because he was an actor, he helped directed what the skit program, which was called, ironically on purpose, the Book of Acts. Um, and it was very wildly popular. They traveled around and did skits everywhere, and they biblical messages and principles and stuff, and acted them out and stuff. And it was all volunteer, and it was really cool. Um, my dad did a lot of volunteering and helping at the church. And then when we had some stuff go on, which I don't remember exactly what it was, it might have been the vision hos uh, hospital stuff or something like that. Um, Nobody was there for him. Everybody's always helping everybody else, but they they didn't help my dad and my family when we needed it, and so that kind of
Mm,
disenchanted my father
yep.
from church. But we didn't walk away from God. We just didn't go to church.
Hmm.
So we were Christian, but we were quiet about it. Um, and so basically, I thought I was a Christian because I was a child. You think, so I'm Irish American, so I'm Irish American because my family. It's the same kind of thing. You don't understand. And then when I was in junior high, I befriended a Christian gal, and she led me to faith, and that kind of galvanized me to being a real Christian. Um, and my walk has been muddy ever since. Um, um, and but but we had lots of biblical books, um, and uh, like things that I could references as well as regular Christian books, contemporary things of the era back in the 80s and stuff. So both my family, both my parents were readers, especially my mom. And my dad enjoyed writing, and so he used to have tons of books on writing. So uh, it was kind of a fun thing. I should say, you asked about my family, the home I grew up in. I have kind of an eclectic background. My brother and I grew up working with my dad as children in teenage years and early 20s and so forth, working in media production. So we had our own eclectic background.
What kind
Uh,
of media?
uh, Mostly video and audio production, and some video and some film later on.
Wow.
But my dad was friends with people who owned a audio recording studio, and he did a lot of voiceover, and he also taught filmmaking and voiceover and screenwriting, and so we would help him not only in the production stuff but also in the classes. So we grew up. I felt more comfortable talking with adults than I did other kids, because of that background of just meeting a whole bunch, everything from bankers to CEOs to FedEx drivers to plumbers and bakers and whatever. So it was a wide mix of different people in his voiceover classes. And my brother and I used to help. My brother helped more in the audio studio in the control room, helping put the music library CDs and the sound effects CDs into the CD drive, and the engineer would pipe it into the mix as we recorded people live. And he was really good at it. He had fantastic ears. And then I help more with the script stuff, uh, coordinating the scripts, filing the scripts, getting the scripts, rehearsing with students. Um, and I have a funny coffee story, so you can ask me about the coffee story a little later when I was a kid. I didn't quite understand something, but um, but so I grew up. My brother and I grew up working with my dad, and he was our mentor. We never really, neither my brother and I were wanting to be actors, writers, or directors. We just believed in my dad's projects and his films, and we wanted to make them happen. We never were successful in that, but we uh, we did a lot of good, and we made a lot of friends, and it wasn't wasted.
Hmm.
Um, it's like, so I'm sure my dad is enjoying his time with the C.S. Lewis's and the other people like himself who never got big renown and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like big, writers group up in heaven. It's like,
Yep.
oh, I'm working on this, I'm working on this. Oh, you're doing this wrong. But yeah, so that's a little bit of my background. So I have my father's background is eclectic, my mom's background is eclectic, and my brother and I were like, we're just a weird family, but in a good way. And then we also
Yeah.
have the health issues, which we went through 10 years in the late 80s through the 90s. We had a total combination of 17, no, 14 or 17 different retinal detachments. They don't hurt. So if you have extreme nearsightedness, your eyes are bigger and your retina is stretched more like a rubber band. So if you or I got hit, um, you would maybe get a black and blue. I might get a retinal detachment, and I would need to see an eye doctor and get surgery within 48 hours before I lose vision in that eye.
Wow.
So it started with Ian, and he's the king. I think he's had 14 eye surgeries, and my mom's lost her sight during when we were losing my grandmother, um, and so she's legally blind, but she has a little bit of vision in one eye. But we didn't notice it in time for her because there was a lot going on medically and financially and stuff. So one of the sad things about our lives is even though we were a very close, warm, loving family, we had a lot of health issues. We had a lot of money troubles because of the health issues, as well as income wasn't a 9 to 5 job. It was gig
Yeah.
to gig kind of thing. And so we had dear friends who were like family to us, and uh, but I didn't grow up in a very stable financial situation. Right now, our finances are stable. We're not the best, but we're fine. Um, but that's kind of a little bit of my childhood and the home that I grew up in.
Mm.
We all we there wasn't any real bad tragic things that some other families have to deal with. It was just a money issue
Yeah.
and the health issues, and it kept us bound, glued together to
Mm.
enduring. It either separates people or
Yeah.
glues them together. And
Yeah.
fortunately for us, my dad had a wonderful sense of humor. He was a very loving, generous man, and he did the best he could for us.
Mhm.
He was smart. He wasn't a genius, and he wasn't that great with because he was an actor, writer. You know, he wasn't the best at making business deals and stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's why they need managers and agents and stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of a blah at you there.
Well, did you move around a lot or did you stay pretty much in one
No,
place?
we were settlers. We
Oh, that's
we
good.
lived. Let's see. We lived in Colorado in the Denver metro area. There's a suburb called Golden, and then we moved to Arvada, which is suburbs of Denver, mostly on the northern
Okay.
western side kind of
Okay.
thing. Um, and then in uh 2000 early 2000s, like right around 9/11, not 9/11, but it was 9/11. No, that was 2001, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it was around 2000 something. We moved to northern Colorado, to a few cities up here. So we tended to like my first two childhood things in Colorado, we lived there for like 10 years apiece.
Hmm.
10 to 8 to 10 years apiece, and then 6 or 7 years, and we're finally, and it's on my website. I'm in Loveland, Colorado, and which I really love. And we've been here at this apartment that we live in for like 10 years now.
Okay.
This will be
Okay.
10 years. So we're kind of settlers. We don't like to move very much. We have a lot of stuff.
Do you
Which,
still live with your mother?
yes, my
Oh,
family all
wonderful.
live together because of health reasons.
Yep.
And
Yep.
also, we're just that close with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I I'm like I'm probably one of these people. I eat Cheetos periodically, but it's not covering me. Um, yeah. I but my brother and I, when my dad passed away in 2011, it just totally changed our lives.
Oh, I can
We
imagine.
He was our breadwinner, and my brother and I both have vision and hearing issues, and so he was our eyes and ears, and he drove. And so my brother did learn to drive, but he had vision issues that started deteriorating as well. Um, so he no longer drives. But my mom needed at-home care, and we found out that there is Medicaid will help uh, pay for family members or whoever whoever the client wants. So my mother, the
Yep.
client of
Yep.
Medicaid,
Yep.
to take care of them at home.
Yep.
and it's self-directed care, basically.
Yep.
It's way cheaper, it's
Yep.
better care
Yep.
than making somebody go to a, a facility.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and so we got on that program. It took us several months to get on that.
Yeah.
And and then unfortunately my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, she had health issues back in 2020, and she needed the same kind of care, a little bit more than my mom had. And so my brother was caregiver for the both of them, and then we ended up changing. We decided, you know what, it might be like more financially stable for us if like I'm mom's caregiver and you're Rita's caregiver. And uh his wife, and it was um, because it just it doesn't make us rich or anything. It just like keeps a roof over our head, food in the
Yep.
fridge,
Yep.
and everything's financially stable, which my dad would have wanted for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like it's hand to mouth, paycheck
Yep.
to paycheck kind of thing,
Yep.
but it it allows us the financial freedom to just focus on taking care of them.
Yep.
And so, if anybody has family members who have health issues, please feel free to reach out to me. I will help you figure out if you have something in your area like this. Um, each state is different with their
Yep.
Medicaid program.
Yep.
So, what worked for me may not work for you, but I can
Yep.
talk about the principles of how it works and you can figure it out from there. Other countries, I apologize, I don't know if you have anything like it. You probably do if you have human services of some sort. Um, but that's kind of something near and dear to me because I grew up with health issues. I grew up with a family with health issues. I was the family
Yeah.
caregiver um, to different hospital stays and whatnot. So it's like I I can empathize.
Yep. Yep.
So so it's like I have all this weird. I have the glory, you know, you know, um, glamour of show business and the health issues,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
being a weird, quirky person myself. So it's like, yeah, weird.
Well, how did you find the corner and what was
Mm.
what was that journey like?
Oh, that was interesting. Okay, so how I found Jordan Peterson was through my brother, and he and I are the exact opposite of what you usually have. So he found one of his videos of like talking. He shared a video with him talking. I don't remember the woman's name who was blackballed in the college thing, the intern or whatever her name was. But he was
Oh
talking to
yeah, her. I
somebody
remember her.
after that. He was talking to a classroom of people after that, explaining the situation. And I'm like, who is this guy? This guy is just so together and with it, and you
Lindsay
know,
Shepherd, was that
fascinating.
her name?
I think that might be
Let
it.
me look it up.
Yeah.
It,
And and I was sympathetic, and I saw the suspender video as well, and I'm like, this is impressive. He's dealing with, you know, agitators, being really mean and rude to him, and he's just being as patient and calm and cool and collected, and I'm like, this is an interesting guy. And and so I at first I did I got interested in his psychological classes and would take care of my mom and stuff. I have a lot of downtime. So, and I'm a learner. I like learning stuff. So he's like a whole new thing. It's like new territory. Let's
yeah.
explore. And so I did a couple of his different psychological classes. When the biblical series came out, I was all over that on White on Rice. And I was like, this is fascinating. I've never heard anybody talk about this stuff before. And it's like when you're a Christian for like 30 to 40 years, you get a little tired of hearing the same old Bible stories. Nothing wrong about the Bible. I mean, it's a fantastic book. But, the way I get stuff is I don't get the insight and uh newer, fresher stuff. Everything is kind of like dumbed down, and so it's not intellectually engaging for me. And I'm not an academic, so I'm like somewhere in between.
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm.
it's like I don't, and so like, but so this was like fascinating. The Cain and Abel thing was like that blew my mind with understanding resentment. It's like nobody's talked about that. I'm like, oh, this makes so much more sense. And I didn't agree with everything because I'm not into evolution. I realize it might be true. Yes, I get it. But I'm like, artistically, because my dad was a creator, I'm like, it makes more sense the way the Bible says it. It just nicer. I like that way, you know.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
I understand it might not be intellectually accurate, but I don't care. And yeah, um, anyhow, how did I find the corner?
So you
Um,
found Jordan
I
Peterson
found
through
Jordan
Lindsay Shepherd.
Peterson.
It is her name, Lindsay Shepherd. And
Okay.
it's interesting because I see the Lindsay Shepherd affair update colon 2.7 million views 6 years ago. So
Wow.
um yeah, I'm looking to see. Well, it's always hard to know. She had a channel. Let's see if she's still doing stuff. I see something 2 years ago, 1 year ago. So she's still out there, not terribly active. I'm sure she just sort of moved on with her life. So,
Yeah. I
um,
wish her the best.
yeah,
She's
yeah.
been so, it's like in media production, there's one of the things I didn't explain is I was sympathetic to Jordan Peterson and also her and other people that were in the IDW who were blackballed because in media production it is heavily, heavily liberal.
Oh,
And my family are Christian conservative. Back in the 80s and 90s, you did not talk about this. You were, and it was the general assumption that you were liberal. And, you know, Charlton Heston and Tom Selleck had a particular, I'm not going to get into the controversial issue, but if anybody wants to talk to me about it, fine. But they had a certain conservative view. It's not technically quite conservative, but most conservatives have this viewpoint on one issue. And when they came out to kind of stand behind their belief, they
hmm.
were, they were treated just like Peterson was in the media. And so I am very sympathetic to people who are ganged up on by the liberal media establishment. Even though I have many dear friends who are liberals and moderates, I'm like, there's this side of you that you do not remember or realize that you're doing to these people that you disagree with. And so, for the lady you just mentioned, whose name I'm blanking on at the moment, Lindsay
Lindsay Shepherd.
Linda Shepherd and also Peterson, I'm, this is unfair and shouldn't be happening, and I want to hear their perspective on things. And so eventually I joined, how I found you was actually through some Facebook groups I joined on Jordan
Oh,
Peterson.
yeah. I was
Most of
part
them
of
are
a
gone.
Jordan Peterson Facebook group a long time. I haven't done
Yeah,
anything on
I
Facebook in
me
years, but
yeah,
yeah.
and I gotten more into Discord lately, so I don't go into um, Facebook as often as I used to. But your name kept coming up as a Christian in the online space that did kind of commentary videos on Peterson. And I'm like, oh yeah, I should check him out. And of course, I didn't follow up on that for like quite a few times. And then finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna find out who this guy is. And so I look it up on YouTube, and I'm like, this guy has. He, it was like finding a new Peterson that was like more common. I'm like, I like this guy. He's, you even though we don't agree politically, you and I could just you remind me of my friends who are just
Hmm.
so chill. You're like, it doesn't bother me that you think of a different way than I do, kind of thing. And you're very warm and accepting and love people you know, and you have a little bit of a troll in you,
Yeah, I
which
do
I'm
have a
like,
little
yeah,
troll
my
in
friends
me.
do troll each other a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so I like watched a bunch of your videos, and then when the Discord finally happened, I'm like, oh, so I have a, paranoia of like, I'm a very private person. So actually going from being like not using my real name online, aside from like professional website and stuff, um, on social stuff, it's like a big, huge thing for me. So it's like, I'm like, okay, Joey and the guy did a video saying, please use your real name to make it more authentic and create a community and all this kind of stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. So when I joined, I just used my first name and a little Clover, because I have an Irish last name. And I'm like, I'm going to be bold and do this.
Mm,
And the corner ended up, especially our little slice of the corner,
yeah.
is actually a very self-selecting group of people.
Yep.
Um, there's some flakes in our corner, and we love them.
That's right.
And there's,
There are flakes.
yeah, yeah, I might be one of them, you know, but most of the people are very genuine,
Yeah.
down to earth. They come from all walks of life,
Yeah.
different political spectrums,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. And I just I was mostly a lurker. And I started getting into stuff and talking to people online with a voice chat. That was a big deal for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah.
out of my shell a little bit because I've been
Yep.
conditioned that talking to internet online is bad. The same thing is like getting into a car with a stranger is bad. You know, so I use Lyft. So, life has changed drastically. Um, and uh, but I apologize. I think I finished answering your question, unless you had a little nuance
Well,
thing.
so you got into the Discord server, and one of the things that happened early on was that the Discord server grew so rapidly. Then
Mhm.
there started to be little subservers. So there's like the writer subserver and the artist subserver, and there were sort of local subservers. And so in those
Yeah.
early days of Bridges of Meaning, there was sort of a proliferation of servers. Did you kind of go with the writers group,
Yep.
or tell me about that,
I
because there are a lot of interesting people in that group
Oh
early
yeah.
on.
The writer's server is very quiet, but it is active in more the voice chat club kind of
Oh,
oriented way. So
okay.
there's a little bit of activity, and Nolan is the admin of that. So I have a huge amount of respect for him. So when I saw him being interviewed by him, I'm watching. I I have a hearing loss, so it makes it a little hard for me to hear him. But I put the closed captions on, and that helps a lot. But I have a huge amount of respect for the guy,
Yeah.
and and uh, and he and so I got in there as everybody was starting to kind of wind down. Um, and so Andrew with the Bang was in there, and Sherry was in there, and and a whole bunch of people doing stuff, and I just came in towards the tail end. And this is the story of my life. I always get there at the tail end of stuff. I'm like, I have no idea. I just have this perfect timing when things are shutting down. I come in and I like pick up the pieces or whatever. Um, but I I was right. I know this sounds really silly. I never envisioned myself as a writer.
Hmm.
I had some fan fictions that I was working on
Hmm.
20 years ago, and they were just more like finger painting, fun things for me to do,
Yeah.
based on an anime, Naruto. I know it's cheesy, but it's true. Um,
It's
and
women, it's women your age. I mean, that's
yeah,
kind of that's
yeah,
I look at my daughters, and they did all this stuff.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
And so but so I really just like, uh, you know, it was about uh 2018, 19, somewhere in there. I'm not sure quite. I have to look at my like Discord profile thing and see when I actually joined the writer server. But I kind of lurked a little bit. I talked with some people. I joined the book club a couple times when they had books that I was interested in. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys, who's one of our main guys for the anthology, Josh, he's the one who started the writers group. And I was like all over that. I'm like, yes, I want to be a part of this. And and then Jordan came along a little bit later. But he the one who came up with the idea for the anthology, and we'll talk about that later. But and then it ended up being some people would come and go. It was mostly Josh and me for a while,
yeah.
and we work on different stuff. It was very laid back. It was like we share stuff that we wrote, and we take turns being the one that got share stuff and have people critique it and give us feedback. And Josh is fantastic at giving feedback. And um and so we have our different things, but we all are united by Peterson.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
the ironic thing is we're all Christian conservative. And I never had that in writers groups before. It's
Oh.
really weird and refreshing and nice.
Hmm.
I have friends who are I have deep close friends for over 10 years who are liberals and moderates. So I love them dearly. There's that um, exchange of ideas and friction and nuance and freshness that happens when you have a eclectic mix of different people.
Yeah.
But it was the having conservative friends um, is more of a luxury for me. It's the norm for everyone else, so whether they liberal or conservative or whatever, or libertarian or whatever. Um, but for me, it's kind of nice to actually have a creative group that's more Christian and conservative, even though they're very, uh, they're very gregarious in their, love thy neighbor kind of thing as well. Um, so it's kind of really interesting mix. It only could happen in the writers of it. It was like, wow, it wasn't premeditated or anything. It just happened. So, and then, but I ended up joining other little discords as I found out about them. So I've joined Grim Grizz. I've joined Mark. Uh, I can never say his
Lefevre.
last name.
Mark
Lefevre.
Lefevre. Yep.
Lefevre. And I have a huge amount of respect for him. I don't agree with him on everything, but I'm like, man, that guy is really stinking smart.
He's very smart. He's a very smart guy. He really
Yes,
is.
it's like wow,
Yeah.
you know. And so, and then I kind of morphed from just being in the Discord and chatting little bits here and there and doing some voice chats here and there, um, to finally getting up the courage to actually join on camera. And that took me a longer time because I have a small apartment. I don't feel comfortable as a woman having the internet see my bedroom. It's like not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people are very lax about it. I'm like, what are you doing? You
Yeah.
know. Um, but I found this pop-up green screen that just goes on the back of my chair.
Ah.
I can send you the information on it. So if anybody's shy and you have the same situation as me, it's only about $50. It's called Web Around. Big advertisement, you can have a sponsor for your show. But send me
Yeah.
send me the send me an email and I'll send you the link. It's changed my life drastically. I really
Really?
enjoy this face to face. The voice was very different than text.
Yep.
And then just being able to do face to face on video is is drastically different. Even though I have vision issues and stuff, and I'm not wearing my glasses because I've been told I can't see your eyes. And so, but this distance is fine. I'm nearsighted, so it's not a big deal. But it's just drastically changed my relationship with the different people, and so, and
Hmm.
that's it's uh,
So are you
it,
on which live streams do you, because part of I'm probably going to work on a website to try and bring a little bit more organization to this because
oh yeah,
I want people to be able to find live streams more easily because I know there are more people who'd like to participate. And I think if we
yeah,
can continue to proliferate this and probably find some other ways to have other channels do live streaming so people can because this has been a learning process for me and I
mm,
saw when I had no idea what Discord was. My son Jared knew what it was and
uh,
Rick knew what it was and Joey knew what it was. I didn't know what it was. And then when I saw the voice live stream, the voice chat, that was, oh, that's much better than text. And
mm,
then of course I was playing around. I had the open studio on Bridges of Meaning where I just set up a computer with its webcam on and I thought it'd be cool to see to kind of have a sense of we're not working by ourselves, but we're working together. And then that opened up a whole new thing. And then Jacob really brought the just chatting thing out with StreamYard, and that brought
yeah,
things to a new level. So it would be
yeah.
nice to make it a little bit more user friendly so people could find one another and relationships. I'm curious to hear a little bit more reflection from you on how the jump from Discord to video chatting on the internet, how that changed your perception of the relationships with people?
That's a good question. I think it was I don't think this is something that can be done just on the internet alone. I think you need this. We have a sense of trust in our community, um, and it, this space, probably thanks to the evolution you just explained, as well as Jacob's hand in pioneering it,
Yep.
um, has shifted it. So I grew up with media being professional, you know, like a podcast or a show or interview and all this kind of stuff. So you guys went at it from a totally different perspective. As you went from the social part, underlined, bold, italicized social part of media,
Yep.
the social media, and made it social,
Yep.
which was very fascinating to me as a media person watching this evolution happen. Um, I noticed that some people, so like there's one lady who has an axe to grind on the Discord, and I have a lot of respect for her because she just hangs around and she always welcomes people, and she's a quirky person herself, and she's in the trenches doing what she trying to do to change her life and transform her life as well. And she was on Chad's program, and I like this lady, you know, and I don't agree with her on everything. I think she's a little bombastic, but I have weird quirks and stuff too. So I was like, I'm not picking on you or anything. And um, I noticed she's going through a bit of evolution herself,
Hmm.
of being drawn out from the internet Reddit thing that she had in her background to being more social and more, you know, talking with other people, and she brings more of the internet to us,
Hmm.
and but she's kind of trying to transform herself, and I have a huge amount of respect for her. And I noticed that in my interactions with people, I used to keep it voice only before I got this. And when I got this, my relationships with the different people I chatted with, like Cassidy, I've had several different projects with Cassidy in the past, helping with some of the marriage crisis stuff and whatnot. We helped with the roundtable thing that
Hmm.
happened a while back, several
Hmm.
years ago now. And there's just a more relational, we can see each other, and it's not quite embodied yet. I have to actually make myself eventually someday go to one of the events. But and I think that'll take everything to another level.
Well, hopefully
Um,
we'll have, I mean, at some point we should have one near Colorado. I don't know.
oh, that would be fantastic. I
Yeah.
I would try to figure if it was in Denver, I would try to figure out how to get down there.
Well, there's a
But
Christian, there are Christian from churches in Denver. I could probably
yeah,
get a place. We just
yeah,
need some
yeah.
organizers,
I'm
but
in Loveland, so if you end up wanting to come to Loveland, I can help try to facilitate something.
all
I
right.
would be mostly homebound and do a little bit of driving with Lyft and stuff,
Yeah.
but um, but most people probably would want to go to Denver because it's more central and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just like, the New Yorkers that my family was more of the escape from New York kind of family, so it was like going to Denver is going to New York.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I get that.
But I do it for you guys, you know. Um, but I how do I explain
It is interesting to
it,
me
it's
how,
like a
yeah.
it's a relational. I have, even though I'm looking at your image, I'm not looking at the camera. I'm still feeling like I'm connecting with you as a person
Yeah.
at that intuitive thing, and it just it's it's more real, it's more invested, it's more um, genuine, instead of just being the disembodied voice, you know. Uh, Before the weird thing happened with poor Chad, I used to do voice thing, and to answer your earlier question is which live stream was I on? The only one I could actually join was Father Eric's because it fell on a Sunday night at the time. It's now moved to a Monday night.
Oh, he moved to Monday night?
Yep, his schedule changed. He did it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it just happened like last week or something. So, um, but I joined the guys and I felt like an idiot because these smart guys and I'm like I don't know what to say. I just want to spend time with them. And they talk and banter back and forth and he and Mark are really good friends
Yeah.
and they talk back and forth. I just like hanging out with them, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
And I have a thing about learning and Mark is like, "Don't stop learning." 'Cause he's going into the overdose, expert, you know, um, society that we're in, and I'm like, I want to learn. This is kind of who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so I graciously don't bring that up much.
Well,
But he's the only one I've been able to. Everybody else does it early in the morning, and I'm like,
yeah.
I'm just like, I'm not a morning person. Plus, I got caregiving duties, so it's
Yep.
not happening.
Yep. Yep. No,
So,
Jacob's vision early on was 24/7 and
mm,
24/7 availability at least. And of
mm.
course, there was that one 24-hour live stream marathon that they did once.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even watch that, but I'm like, holy mackerel, that's
Yeah.
incredible, guys.
Yeah. And um and in the early days of Bridges of Meaning Discord, there were so many people and it was so active, it did really go 24/7. And that was impressive
Yeah.
because, of course, you've got mostly the English speaking world. So you've got North America and you've got Europe, and
Hmm.
then, some people in Eastern Europe, but then you've got Australia and New Zealand. They'll come
Right.
online at some point. And so you
Yeah.
sort of get all the way around the clock.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, hours are difficult and finding is difficult, but
Yeah.
it's been interesting to me the the power of doing this. I just dropped on Mark Parker's live stream before I got on here because I noticed that he was live streaming, and
Oh, cool.
it is fun to just be able to just pop in
Hmm.
and have a few things. And a lot of the listening that I think a lot of people here do is sort of, I'm doing the dishes, I'm driving the car, I'm doing
Hmm.
chores,
Right.
something I got to do with my hand. It's a little repetitive and I want something. And of course, YouTube is and audiobooks and all that. There's so much content that you could listen to, but the personal relational aspect just makes it all the much richer when you can
Yeah.
begin to develop a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
And that's and Grizz, Grizz has, what amazes me is the mix of different personalities, many of whom don't always get along.
Yeah.
Because of course,
Yeah.
you've got
They got some friction
Mark and
going on.
Jacob's Corner and Grail Country. I mean,
Yeah.
that those groups have had a lot of tension in the past.
Yeah.
But it's still part of one group, and
Yeah.
there's enough people that are, happy to jump into each place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so tell me about the evolution of this anthology. How did this idea come about?
Okay, that was Jordan.
Okay.
He joined us several years ago, and we were doing our writers group together and having fun and critiquing each other's work and stuff like that. And Jordan had the bright idea of I'd like to do a community um, book project of some sort, something for to kind of unite and galvanize the Bridges and Meaning space, mostly the writers and or the main server. And we thought that's a fantastic idea. And I'm like, how else am I going to get published? I'm like, I'm all on board for this. I won't have to do all the work. This sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
And so um, we, yeah, so Jordan, he put himself last as the humble guy.
Yeah.
Jordan Johnson. He actually has several self-published books of his own. He's an
Okay.
anime manga fan as well.
Okay.
Um, and so we started working on it, and I wanted to try to open it up to like the awakening from the meaning crisis and symbolic world and
Yep.
try to see if I was trying to get numbers. And he's like, no, let's just do us. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, this is a group project, so we'll do that. And it was kind of good to do that in the first one. We are very easygoing group. It's very easy to collaborate together. Um, and so one of the things I decided to do is I volunteered to be the marketing person. I don't have a marketing degree or anything like that. I never finished college. But I understand marketing from working in media. And so I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I tried to learn a bunch of stuff about book publishing and book marketing and writing an anthology. I even found a book on Amazon about writing an anthology, and I sent that to Jordan because he was going to be our main guy. And so we got about 9 or 10 contributors, and those are the names of the people there. Um, so uh, yeah, the bios where you were,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
So there's you,
yeah, that's me. Yep,
Dan Veneman.
Dan Wiedemann. So there's a story behind Dan Wiedemann. He wrote the article on you and estuary back after Chino. Um,
Oh,
and he is with the Banner, which is your
right. Yep.
denomination's magazine newsletter.
Yep.
And really nice guy to work with. So when I was like looking for more people, one of your suggestions was to reach out to John Van Donk.
Yep.
And Joe was kind enough to get me his contact information. I sent him a nice email telling him what the heck we're doing. And he suggested I contact the banner directly. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to be able to get him to do this. So I drafted up an email, being a writer, being a daughter of a writer, I had to have the perfect words, I got to impress them. And they were chill,
They're
and
very nice at the banner. They're very
they
nice.
are really wonderful people. And they checked, you know, they said, yeah, that sounds good. We'll give you permission to do this. And I had to get special permission from Justin Wells to use the photo, and he gave us permission. Um, and and John Van Donk, that's not the only thing he did for us. I asked him if he had anything, and at the time he didn't. And then after I got permission from um, the got permission from the banner, I emailed John Van Donk back, and he says, I do have this thing laying around, and it was the is estuary a antidote to cancel culture? And I'm like, that sounds
Oh,
intriguing.
that's a
And
very Vendonk approach.
yeah, and so it was very complimentary to the estuary article from the banner. The estuary article from the banner is more of an overview for outsiders to understand what the heck this movement is about. And his thing is more behind the scenes of the evolution and the history of everything. And I I was the one who talked to the guys and said, we really need to have something about the estuary in here. Either we write it ourselves or we find somebody who can write something for us. And then when I found through one of your videos that the banner did an article, I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I linked it on the website for the anthologies, right? It was a meaning anthology. And I never imagined that we get permission to use it for the book. That was fantastic. But that wasn't John Van Donk's only contribution. He not only gave us his own piece and helped me with the banner, but he also was the one who uh, told our graphic artist about the project.
Um,
Emily, she's the one who designed the cover.
Emily Verdine?
Yes, she's part of the
Oh,
estuary protocol and group and everything. And also Jordan is part of his local estuary.
okay.
So we have at least two people who are estuary people in the project. Um, and we did a collab. We wanted to make it community oriented collaborative, and so we had in the Discord we opened it up for people to vote on the 3 different tops covers, and that was the cover that most of them chose. And so that photo cost us a little bit of money, but it was totally worth it. And I really like the colors, orange to stand out on Amazon so people can find it easier. And it just looks classy and neat. We all wanted a bridge because bridge of the meaning, you know, the kind of homage, the kind of thing,
Yep.
where we came from, the spirit of the thing and everything. And so it was very, we did a lot of collaborative stuff with people to allow people to participate as they could. We didn't get as much participation as we wish because we're always like going up in the Discord, so people don't find us very often, and not everybody goes to all the different channels where like we're allowed to post.
Yep.
And but I did my best to periodically post updates, and it took us about 2 years to do this. Um, we had foolishly had thought that we could do this in a year, and it did not happen. So we just adjusted
Yeah.
as needed.
Yep.
Um, but we actually, Josh wrote a very wonderful piece. It's very interesting. He's talking about the alchemy of community,
Hmm.
and it's really a well-written piece. Um, I I can't do it justice, but um, it's just fascinating. It's like what one of the things I told the guys is we want to try to make this interesting because one of the biggest things about anthologies, according to this book that I read, is most anthologies fail because they're not interesting. They have
Hmm.
a lot of dead weight in them, a lot of older pieces and stuff.
Yep.
And one of the one couple, Chad and Anne, had written pieces more based on relationships, um, and they were fiction pieces that were uncompleted but still had a nice beginning, middle, and end. Um, and Merlin, I should tell you about Merlin too. Um, this is actual screenplay. I
Hmm.
interviewed David Walker, who is the gentleman who wrote this piece. He actually was working with Chad and Jordan um, on a different project that unfortunately didn't come to fruition for them, but they had spent time working together. And so David had heard about this, and he asked a bunch of people. This is one of the snippets from one of his bigger screenplays. So it's a smaller story within a bigger screenplay. And the feedback he got back was that everybody really liked Merlin the best, and it's very symbolic. Um, it's very much the whole project. The original big project was uh, in the vein of um, Jonathan Pajot's symbology kind of mentality, and trying to reinfuse the symbology and the essence of the fairy tales back from what it originally was uh, created. And it's actually very well written. I kind of stalled reading it for a long time because I thought it would be a huge chunk, but I read it. I had the proof um, copy that got sent to me, and we're making corrections and stuff. And I read through everything, and I'm like, this is really freaking good.
Hmm.
um, so that was kind of fun. Um, Chad and Anne, who they wanted to remain anonymous, so they went by their pseudonyms, um, and they they had two different stories. One was more a dystopian kind of world where relationships are rediscovered, and 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 then another world where a lady is kind of part of this organized crime thing, and has no proper relationships with people kind of thing. And so it was kind of interesting. At first, I'm like, um, it's not talking about community. But when it was explained to me, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's still awesome. The pieces are awesome. Um, let's see. Lot to See is really cool. That's Jordan's piece. These are letters from somebody of an after an alien attack on the world, and a bunch of people are stuck on an old warship,
Huh.
and they only have a limited amount of paper. And so this woman who lost her husband is writing the thing, and they talk about estuary. It doesn't say estuary, but you know what it's talking about if you're part of the estuary, bit
Huh.
of the meaning community. And it's really well written, and it's very captivating. And I'm like, the guys are better writers than me. I'm like, you guys are awesome. Josh and Jordan, they're great. And who am I forgetting? Um, Jillian wrote about his experience um,
Oh yeah,
as
Julian's.
yeah. He he wrote. I actually had an interesting interaction as I was promoting it on the different servers, including the Jonathan Pajot and the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, just letting them know about the project in hopes that they might be interested. One gentleman wanted to actually talk to Julian about his experience in the little corner, um, based on his inclusion in the book, and his account of his history with, and he was Julian was more, I wish I would have been able to interact with Esther O'Reilly, Bethel McGrew,
Yeah.
and that would have been really cool. But I just sort of kept missing her and never interacting with her, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
just
she's
like
fun.
ships passing each other in the night kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think we really would have hit it off with each other, but she's welcome to contact me and we can chat or something. But I realize that she's pretty busy with life and stuff right now. But
Yeah, she teaches math and she does her
yeah,
writing and so
yeah,
she's got her family, so
mm,
yeah. Now she
yeah,
was active in those early days too. It was a fun moment, very scenius. Um for a moment. And those moments sort of, I mean, they come and go, those
yeah.
moments. And
They're
but then there are
fleeting.
other diehards who stay, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
really what then continues. And
yeah.
the communities continue to morph and change. So
And one of the things that I really appreciated about Julian, which I'd like to tell you about because I've only discovered this in the last 2 days, um, is and Julian's experience of having his worldview and life become much more broader. Not that
mm,
he's changed his convictions or his beliefs at all, but
right.
he's in the piece that he wrote, he's talking about how he just became more gracious and more accepting and more understanding of other people from different walks of life,
Yep.
especially from his experience in the corner and especially in the Bridges of Meaning area. Um, and uh, one of the things I just learned about through one of my friends is a concept that's kind of bandied around since 5 or 6 years now. It's called intellectual hospitality.
Hmm.
Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay, so are you familiar with an author named Diana Glacier? Glacier? She wrote Bandersnatch.
Oh, no.
It's a account of the Inklings community of like what worked and what didn't work and the the things they did right, the things they did wrong. Bandersnatch. It's C.S. Lewis and all them, and it's very interesting. And she's only, I think it was from 2015 or something like that, where I just watched literally this afternoon her first three-part series on the concept of intellectual hospitality.
Hmm.
And she did not create the term, she's seen it bandied about. And then another lady who is, I think, the president of the Trinity Forum, if I'm remembering the name of it right, she did an article piece on it. So Diana has a blog post with extra links in it, and so I read the blog post, I read a bunch of different other blog posts, including the ladies from Trinity Forum, and I don't know where it started from, but it's taking tolerance to another level of the Christian love, and it's not negating um, or violating your own worldviews or your own convictions or anything, but coming at people with love and trying to understand where they're coming from, because usually they have very deep personal reasons why they believe what they believe,
Hmm.
you know, their own experience and stuff like that. And I really, I'm, I'm, I'm one of the, I'm, I'm one of the ones that's not really diehard political. I have a lot of respect for Jordan Peterson for speaking up and stuff, um, and I understand there's certain corners of our little corner who are very much political in nature, and we need to call a spade and all that, and I totally respect that. But there's also the thing of like the human beings, they're made in God's image. You know, you need to, even people I vehemently disagree with, and I, I'm friends with them for over 10 years, and they actually have a lot of nuance. There's a mutual
Yeah.
love and respect
Yeah.
there. And so I grasp onto this intellectual hospitality. This is only a 2 day old thing. And I'm like, what is this thing? I've never heard of this. And I'm like, now I have something new to talk about. And I like a lot of the bridges of meaning here, even though we're weird and quirky, as I like to say, it's not always agreeable, but it's amiable.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there
That's
is
a good way to put it.
intellectual hospitality even with the people. And sometimes there's pushback,
Yeah. Yeah.
of people not agreeing with each other and saying, hey, you're not, this isn't kosher kind of thing.
Yeah.
But or I don't agree with you here.
Yeah.
And then they'll take it to the forum. But which is a place where more debate goes on.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah, when people would
yeah,
tend to auger down, we would say, get out of this thread and go to the forum and
yeah,
have your fight there. So
yeah,
so that all the other threads don't get swallowed up by your debate
yeah,
about universalism or the
yeah,
Trinity or something like that.
right,
You know,
yeah.
it's interesting. So Eric Weinstein, obviously, the person who coined the IDW, one of
Mhm.
his main points early on was that the academy and the sciences were canceling, um, I'll just call them outliers.
Mm.
And, you know, it's interesting. I'll do some risking here, but I think you're a safe person to do this risking with. You know, when you look at someone like Jacob or Mark Lefevre, I mean, they're sort of in some ways they're sort of outliers in some ways because they tend to be prickly, they tend to be opinionated, and
Yeah,
they are very quick to share their very sharp opinions and
yeah,
especially their disagreements. It's
yeah,
one thing when people share their opinions, say, this is what I think. It's another thing when they come up to you and say, you're wrong, and
yep,
you're wrong for these reasons. And it's not just a matter of you being wrong, you're hurting the world, and you've got to stop it right now.
yeah.
Now, a lot of people don't take that real well.
No, they don't.
But, you know, part of Eric Weinstein's point was it's often these people who are also innovators. And
Yes.
because they're sort of willing to be outside the norm in some ways, and I risk some of these people being offended by me characterizing them that way. But, you know, part of Eric's point was that actually part of that temperamental matrix does lead to the creativity. And so Mark and Manuel in the early days, I mean, they did a lot of work sort of in the basement of the server,
Hmm.
with people who wanted to get into meditation and wanted to do some things to sort of improve their lives. And of course,
Yeah,
Jacob was the one who sort of pioneered the leap from in Bridges of Meaning, voice and video chat out onto the open internet with StreamYard. And
yeah,
so the point that Eric Weinstein makes about people who don't always necessarily get along with other people,
mhm,
don't ostracize them or exile them or cancel them
mhm,
because they actually have a part to play and a role to play in the broader community.
yeah,
And there will often be drama and there'll be this or that going on, but they have their part to play too. So
they do.
that should be respected. And
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I have a huge amount of respect for them. I don't agree with them on everything, but I'm like,
you
I'm
couldn't
all for
agree with
them
them on
calling a
everything.
spade
They
a
would
spade.
they would find something to disagree with you on.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure they will find. But it's not mean-spirited. It's not, it's not. I've watched Mark disagree with other people on Father Eric's live stream, but there's love there.
Yeah, yeah.
and
I'd say
and
that
not
too.
in a romantic way. It's like a
Right.
brotherly love. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we're iron sharpening iron thing,
Yeah.
and and uh, I went through an evolution of I'm a totally one of those, you know, highly extroverted, highly agreeable, you know, um, highly high in openness person. And um, I, you know, my sister-in-law tends to be more disagreeable, and so there's a friction there, and nothing against her. She actually cares for us and all of us and me very deeply and
Hmm.
loves us, but I find it irritating. So I can understand people being irritated by Jacob and Mark and other people on the in our little space,
Yep.
the Peterson sphere, as they would like to say.
Yep. The Peterson
Um,
sphere. Yeah.
and But I agree with you. Jordan Peterson, he's changed so many lives just
Yeah.
by speaking the truth
Yeah. Yeah.
as he best understood it.
Yeah.
And he's ostracized in mainstream media. He's ostracized in he's lost his work and his passion of teaching and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like his therapy um, practice.
Yeah.
Um, but he's changed all our lives. He's brought us all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the amount of it's like Jesus wasn't see, like I really liked how you said how the left is very much about kindness and the right is very much about strength. I thought that was beautiful. I'm like, I've never heard that before, that I'm going to steal that. But I'll give you proper credit. Um,
I probably got it from someone else too.
yeah, and it's a good idea to go that way.
Yep.
And but I had a point and I forgot what it was. But speaking the truth, it divides and unites.
Yep.
And there's a and I was inspired by my sister-in-law and also these guys, Peterson as well as Mark and Jacob, to try to be more forthrightful in my speech and my interaction with all my friends. Because I grew up in liberal media prejudice against Christians and conservatives, my family tended to be like this. And my friends accept me as I really am. I don't shove my beliefs down their throat. I cover them with love and mutual respect. Um, but I when something really bothers me, and I'm one of these, I'm kind of like you. I'm a little bit low in neuroticism, which people in high openness should be like have issues, but um, I it takes a I have very few lines in the sand, and when those are crossed and my axiom are poked in one of those lines in the sand, I get really upset, and it takes me a while to calm down, and then I reply back. But I'm trying to be more forthrightful in things that aggravate me or uh, things that I need to call a spade, as it is. And because I'm agreeable, I try to do that in a mutual, respectful way. Um, but I there Jesus wasn't just about being kindness to the marginalized. He was also about speaking truth to people. He was not kind and diplomatic to the Pharisees, and people like to overlook that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so it's like a lot of the business books I read about, trying to build a platform and all this kind of stuff and all this jazz talks about how you're supposed to talk to people and all this kind of stuff. And there's something right and good about saying, I don't agree with you, and this is why you're wrong. And we don't like to hear that. The Pharisees didn't like to hear that. But why did Jesus talk to them like that? A lot of people rationalize is because they were self-righteous, which they probably were. But why did he talk to authority figures that could have him crucified that way? It's like, there's a courage there in being forthright. And there's also a courage in being kind to the outliers who speak a truth to you that you don't want to hear. And so it's just like, I was reading several books, and one of the books was talking about some bicyclist who came up with different ways of riding in traffic and stuff that would be a way safer
Hmm.
um, for people to do. And it didn't catch on because the guy was very highly disagreeable. He kept calling people
Mhm.
stupid and stuff. And then somebody else later on read his works as like, these are important ideas. And then he stepped into the play and reintroduced these ideas that were not his in a gentler form. And then people ended up implementing them. So we need both.
Yep.
We need soothsayers, but we also need the agreeable people who will say, you know, they're right. Here, let me explain it to you in a way you can understand it, that won't ruffle your feathers so much, and maybe we can save more lives,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
But, yeah.
No, and I think that's part of what happens in the corner is people get to know each other and that stretches them.
Mm,
And then we grow in our competence and ability to relate. I mean, the internet forces you to relate to, you both find commonalities, but you're going to find some commonalities in people that are quite different in other ways. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
there's the opponent processing, there's the tension between those two that
yeah,
sort of help us level up in our skill at relating to one another and doing some of this stuff.
yeah.
So,
I want to tell you before we wrap up, I have no idea how much time has gone by, but I want to personally thank you for introducing me to John Vervaeke.
oh,
Totally changed my mind about academic world as a whole.
hmm,
I because I've always had a prejudice against academia because it's a liberal bastion just like media production.
mhm.
And he is totally different. Even though he and I would not agree on many different things, I respect the guy. And his your introduction to him about his agape thing changed my life. I
Oh,
was I was like I'd never heard anybody explain agape love like that.
yeah,
And it's something that he's wrestled with, and he's very gracious and kind-hearted,
yeah,
and he's constantly giving credit where credit is due, which is
yeah.
like my father had the eternal curse of everybody not giving him proper credit for
Mm,
his creative work and stuff. So that
mm,
meant a lot to me. And I'll probably never meet the gentleman, but I watched his series and everything, and I watched some of his interviews with different people. I really enjoyed the one with him and Ray Kelly. Um, but uh, it it changed my prejudice against academia and realizing
mm.
there are people like him and Diana and other people who actually are more nuanced and not, controlled by the ideology.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
So
John is very much that way, and he's 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 a very honest guy,
mm,
and I have nothing but respect for him. So
yeah,
thank you. No,
yeah.
absolutely, and maybe we maybe hopefully at one of these events he'll be there and you'll get to thank him in person.
That would be cool.
There
Yeah.
was a story you were supposed to tell me, and you said, "Well, I'll
Oh,
tell
the
you
coffee
later."
story.
The
Yes,
coffee
the coffee.
story.
So I'm probably like, 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that. And in the beginning, I didn't deal with the script. So there was other volunteers that helped with the script maintenance and stuff. But I help with the craft services, which is basically the refreshments, the morning and the afternoon crafts services. Is basically in media production. We have someone who takes care of the snacks and stuff, and
Yep,
it's called craft services.
yep.
And so my dad had told me that you're supposed to take the coffee grinds out right after they're done percolating, so it doesn't get bitter, so the coffee doesn't get bitter. Well, he didn't know this for a long time, but one of the students was watching me, and I had my hand on the coffee um, filter holder handle, and I'm waiting to watch the last drips of the coffee go down, and as soon as I finished, I pulled it right out. I remember as a student, of course, when you're grown up, you remember this much better, but it's like, why are you doing that? And I explained to him, you're supposed to take it right out so it doesn't get bitter. and, and I can only imagine, like, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I didn't understand that you can just let it sit there for a little bit and then finally
yeah,
take it out, kind of thing. I
yeah,
I would wait there and
yeah,
I'm like, I'm doing craft services. I'm doing this important thing.
yeah. A little
Yeah.
insight into your personality,
Yeah.
especially as an 8-year old.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
how can people find this anthology?
Well, we have it. simple website, writersofmeaning.com. It has all the details. Right now, it's on Amazon. It was released back in the end of August. We are in the works of getting it released to Ingram Sparks, which has a whole bunch of different distribution channels that, like Walmart and other places that people can get it at. Um, and so the details are on there. We have the community page, which has information on the estuary and linking to estuaryhub.com and videos from you and John Van Dock talking about estuary on on the website. That'll be updated and changed as we have new information. So easy to remember, writersofmeaning.com.
All right. Well, I will put that below in the notes
Cool,
so people can
cool,
find it.
cool.
And I'll put
Thank
an
you.
Amazon link there too.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, well, that's that's really cool. The launch was the last day of August
Yep.
2024, so it's been out a few
Yeah.
months already.
I was really enjoying finding out that Nolan had done his within a week, within a week or so of ours. Like,
Yeah.
oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I know
No.
Nolan was working hard on his book, and I was like, "You go, guy. You know,
Yeah.
you do it." I got the book, and it's really good. It's really edifying poetry. I'm not a poetry person. I used to do poetry as a preteen. You know, all teenage girls do this, but his is really good. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
reflective and
Oh, good
very
for him.
nuanced and stuff. So
Well,
really,
thank you, Valerie. Thank you for sharing your life.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to actually meet you, screen to screen, face to face.
Yeah, yeah,
And
a little bit
so,
more than just a little bit on the Discord like we've had
yeah,
before. So
I do need to tell you one last thing, and
sure.
I'll jump off. But um, as a writer, you know, this has kind of inspired me to be a writer. My mom
Mm,
back in 2002, 2020 inspired me to just write. And I never saw myself as a writer. And so I'm not, I have my thing of my dad hanging over me of like, I'm never going to be in his shoes kind of thing.
yeah.
But one of the things in writing is supposed to like build an author's platform. And I, I've been using you as a role model of how to deal with fame and notoriety, and you're just so chill, and you don't go chasing up the hierarchy.
Mm,
Your heart is talking to all of us randos, and you know, lifting us up like Nolan and
mm,
saying, hey, look at this wonderful writer, you know, and also like all these different people doing whatever, you know, like the gentleman who I'm blanking on his thing right now, but the the Christian gentleman who has the website and YouTube channel, um, and he's talking to people and trying to meet other people who are. Um, I'm blanking on his name. I apologize. It was within the last week or two or something like that, but it'll come to me later. But you're talking to a whole bunch of us doing little things,
uh-huh,
and so one of the things I wrestle with is, you know, I want fame, I want, you know, glory, I want to be
yeah.
rich, and I realize that I probably never have that. But I want to do it. I want to walk this walk, whatever it may lead me,
Mm,
the way that you've kind of shown me the path is humility and loving people and putting the relationships first instead of, you know, chasing the brass ring.
well, thank you.
So thank you for doing what you do and just being yourself. And,
Well,
you know,
I think it's much more fun doing the way I do it. I really
yeah,
do.
yeah,
That doesn't mean that there aren't moments when it's like, oh, bigger audience, bigger opportunities, bigger money.
yeah,
Doesn't sound good, but
yeah.
when I look at what you guys put together, when I hear your story, that inspires me,
Thank
and
you.
it really I really appreciate it. So
Well, the main reason we created the book, which I didn't talk about, was to help people have community. And if the only way that we can, they don't have to join our community, they could just create an estuary of their own.
yeah, yeah.
And that's what we wanted to share the fruits of community and estuary, what it resulted in, and inspire others to do something of their own, whatever path that may be.
Well, maybe we'll get an estuary in Denver one of these days.
Oh,
Denver, it's interesting. It's a major city, but
it is.
well, there hasn't been like Minneapolis. We got all kinds of people in Minneapolis, but
Mhm.
just don't hear too many people from Denver pop up.
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately, in Colorado, I've got two other people that are like 2+ hours away from me,
oh yeah,
uh, according to the map thing in Discord.
yeah,
So I haven't been able to connect with any Colorado people yet. So if you're in Colorado and you want to talk, please reach out to me on my website. I'll send you my contact information.
yeah. Do
So
that.
and people can follow my website and shoot me an email. So
Okay,
that'll be fine.
sounds
So
good.
thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Valerie. It's great
Okay.
talking to you.
Great talking to you too.
Take care. Bye bye.